Morning, everybody, and welcome to our latest webinar here at HomeLet. Today I'm joined by Rebecca Baker, who is head of our referencing at HomeLet. Morning, Rebecca. You okay?
Morning, Chris. Yeah, good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, really good. Thank you very much.
Looking very smart today. Nice to put a shirt on for us.
Thank you. Very different. It's been a few months. So obviously, Rebecca's joining us today to chat through our same-day referencing offering and how we utilise the open banking data technology here at HomeLet. We are live, so hopefully we won't make any mistakes. And thank you and welcome to those that have taken the time out of the day to join us. There is a Q&A function, so if you want to submit any questions to us, then feel free to fire away, and we'll try and answer as many of those at the end if we need to, unless, obviously, as we're sort of chatting through, Rebecca covers that off. So before we start going into same-day referencing, Rebecca, do you want to just give us a bit of an insight into your background and the team based here in Lincoln?
Yeah, certainly. So I've been at HomeLet now for just over 14 years, so not quite as long as you, Chris, but we are veterans of the HomeLet world. And during this time, I've held several roles in the referencing department. So I've learnt it from the basics up, really. So I started as a member of the call centre team many moons ago. I then progressed into being what they call an expert coach, training others on the process, progressed into team leader and looking after others and helping them learn the process, and now ultimately responsible for the whole department and its everyday operations, the people, the processes, the changes, the technology that we use, everything essentially is my responsibility. So it's lovely, actually, that I've watched our processes grow and adapt over time. And we've always been on the lookout for ways to make the department even better, whether that's using technology, training our people differently, improving processes to help spot and mitigate fraud, using technology where we can and people where we need to, essentially. And it's that blend that's really key for us. It's a very different department to where I started 14 years ago. We're even in a different building now. But I'm so proud of what the team have achieved and the work that they do each and every day to support customers, especially when you consider the last 12 months, what the nation has been through and the country has been through. The team have definitely risen to that challenge, whether they've been based our lovely offices here in Lincoln or at the comfort of their own home. So they've been incredible.
Brilliant. It has been a testing time, and I know we've gone through a few different lockdowns, so we've had people working from home, and then obviously got them back into the office, and then they've had to then go back working from home. So it's been a challenge, but the feedback we get from our agents on the service levels has been impressive throughout. So I thank you from us and the sales team to you guys in the referencing team. So obviously the purpose of today is to sort of chat through same day referencing. So I guess the first question is, can you give us an overview of how same day referencing works?
Yeah, so it's using open banking, essentially. And open banking gives the applicant the ability to control and share their banking transactions with trusted third parties like HomeLet, but like many other businesses that are utilising this functionality as well. So as I touched on earlier, it's using technology where we can and people where we need to essentially get the best outcome for all involved. So this blend of technology and people ensures that we can make accurate decisions on our referencing applications efficiently and thus delivering what we're calling a same-day reference. So we think it gives a fair outcome to the applicants and it avoids them going through a strictly automated process that could be subject to error. And with the process as well, we are still doing a number of our additional checks. So checks such as CIFAS with the help with the National Fraud Database, and also using our own internal default database. And neither of those checks can be subject to a fully automated process. So having that people element included in eyeballing the data that we are seeing just helps us wrap everything up really nicely in terms of a final report to the customer. And the other nice thing about that is if there's anything that we're seeing that isn't tallying up, versus what the applicants told us on their application form and what we're seeing in the data, we can seamlessly change that to a manual reference at the touch of the button. There's no additional information needed from the applicant at that point because we've collected what we may need at the beginning in the application form. And it just makes a really seamless, quick and easy process for everybody. If part of the reference, however, can be satisfied using some of the data that we find, then we will absolutely do that to help speed up that reference where we can. So, for example, if we look at the banking transactions and the team can comfortably see that the salary has been identified, we will use that and we'll bag that. If we need to then speak to the landlord because we can't see clear enough rental payments, we will pick up the phone using our manual process that I've described, and we'll get the information in the way that we do now and have always done. So, you might get some references that are fully satisfied using open banking. You might get some references where, even though the applicant's provided consent, the data that we've seen in the open banking hasn't met their requirements. And you might get a blend. So you might get one reference that's been satisfied using transactions and one that's been done manual. And the way our system is geared up, it makes that so seamless and in minimal effort for the customer as well, inputting the data. That flexibility for us is a real game changer in how we operate, in my view.
Okay, brilliant. So I guess this might sound like a bit of a silly question, but what are the actual timeframes on same-day referencing? I know the clue, is in the name, but is that actually same day? And how does that differ from what we call a traditional reference?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So same day referencing, when we say same day, we mean within the same day working hours. So when we look at the cases where we have been able to fully satisfy our references with open banking, we're doing 98% within the same day. So it's a much, much quicker turnaround for everybody involved. If part of the reference, as I touched on earlier, has been satisfied using the open banking, but something else needs to be satisfied with the traditional method, we are still finding that it's a quicker reference, but because we're at the mercy of third parties, it can't always be a same day reference, but it's still quicker because part of the reference has been satisfied. In terms of normal traditional references, we are still doing 80% within the first 2 days and 90% within the first 3, but not 98%. So this, as I say, in terms of being a game changer, where we can get that open banking and the data is good and good enough to satisfy the requirement, almost 100% are in the same, working hours. So we're really pleased with that result.
And obviously from an agent's point of view, having that reference back with them quicker, obviously they can, be confident the information's correct. It means then, naturally they can move on to the next stage of their process in a tough market at the moment. And obviously the quicker they can get through referencing and all the internal paperwork, then obviously, naturally the quicker they can get the property let, which, is the key thing, isn't it? So. And
just on that as well, Chris, so I know in some circumstances where the lets are urgent and there's maybe additional documents that we're asking for from the applicant, whether it be pay slips, whether it be bank statements, understandably the letting agent as the customer gets involved to help speed along that process. But all of those calls and emails to us take precious time out of the day. So with our 98% same day reference, there's very little involvement that's needed by anyone else because the applicant does what they need to do up front in terms of providing the consent. We then cater for the rest. We then obviously make it really clear in our notes if we haven't been able to use some of the data and we're requesting manual references, and then our process follows on as normal at the touch of a button. So we're hoping it's really going to cut out some of that additional time where letting agents are sometimes feeling like they need to chase as well.
Yeah. All right, brilliant. So, I guess one of the other key questions here is, how secure is the process? Because, I know from myself, there's a lot of messages out from banks to say, don't provide your details. People get text messages, emails all the time, pretending to be banks asking you to log on. How secure is this process?
So HomeLet only have a one-time use of this data. So with open banking, it's led by the applicant providing that consent, and the consent is provided typically on a one-time basis unless the applicant decides to provide that on an ongoing basis. That's not the need that we have in HomeLet. So it is just on a one-time basis for the use of the reference they're undergoing at that stage. It's restricted to the referencing team, and we will only see payments that could be salary or rent payments. So the way that our system is created, we're not going to see the £1.99 meal deals at McDonald's or Costa's at their lunch. We don't see all of that because we know it's very, very unlikely that's going to be a rent payment that they're paying out to a landlord. The HomeLet team never see any of the applicant's login details, so that is all sat with the applicant on their device, and that's never seen by our team and not stored by us at HomeLet. And during the application form, whether it's the tenant or the guarantor, they're presented with a preview of the transactions that my team are going to be seeing. So it gives them that comfort. If there is something they'd rather us not see, and they see in that preview that potentially is going to be passed over, they can opt out of the process there and then. But it just helps, for that transparency. They can see exactly what it is we're going to be looking at. It gives them the comfort that, if they do see their salary in there and they do see their rental payments, we're going to be accessing the correct information. And once a selection has been made by the HomeLet team, so don't forget, we see those transactions. We're then looking at the information the applicant's given in the application form, finding matches, finding recurring payments to make sure there's something coming in every month or every week if it's weekly pay, for example. Once the team have selected what we need to satisfy that reference, everything else is removed. So it's on there for a snapshot, really. Until the team hit yes, confirm, the rest of it is then removed because we don't deem it necessary for the purposes of that reference anymore. We're only keeping the things that we have needed to use for satisfying that reference. And I think that's really, really important, actually. We do take data security very seriously. We are a regulated business by the Financial Conduct Authority, and that's why we are spending additional time developing our product to make sure it performs how our customers would expect it to perform when they're dealing with a business like ours. And, we don't want to be holding data that is excessive and not relevant for the purposes of a reference. And that is also all that is shared with the letting agents. So they're not getting reams of information and being asked to make their own decisions. We are only sharing what we have used to satisfy that reference from an information point of view as well on our final report.
Okay, excellent. So obviously we touched on a few points there. What are the main benefits, would you say, are for tenants and guarantors to go through this process rather than the traditional referencing route?
So sometimes we get feedback from tenants and guarantors, mainly guarantors, that feel sometimes the process is intrusive. They sometimes feel that they're having to do less to secure a mortgage on a house that they're buying than sometimes satisfying the referencing process. So that could include several documents having to be provided, whether we're asking for bank statements or pay slips, as I've touched on. If someone's self-employed, we may need a tax return. If someone is of independent means, we may then require bank statements to prove savings. You name it. It's what we do. It's important, typically for satisfying traditional references, that we gain that information. But understandably, they can sometimes feel like they're being asked for a lot. The same day reference removes that effort from the tenant or guarantor and means that we can just complete the reference more rapidly with no further involvement. So for some people, that is music to their ears, and that's enough to sell it to them, really. There's another benefit in this as well, where some tenants might believe that if they get in there first with the letting agent and they get a decision quicker, maybe the property is going to be more likely to be theirs. And if they found a property they love, they've set their heart on it, they want to move their family in, or they're moving for their dream job, they might just be thinking, if there's 3 of us applying and I can do this reference today, I could be in with a good chance. And yeah, for us, it's just about being quicker, more streamlined, less intrusive for all involved. And I just think, where there are straightforward circumstances, for me, it's a no-brainer. And I think a lot of our applicants are seeing that as well.
Yeah. And sort of linking on to that, how aware do you think tenants, guarantors are of open banking? Obviously, it's something that we've started utilising at HomeLet. Is it something that's known out there in the wider industry, or, even on a day-to-day applying for different types of credit, etc.?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's one that's probably quite difficult to answer. So open banking was introduced January 2018, and the initial reason for it was to allow more competition within the banks in terms of allowing customers of banks to see their transactions and their data with other banks. So it was kind of increasing some of that competition. Over time, some of the fintech businesses out there have seen other use cases where there could be efficiency gains, such as what we're describing today. So I sometimes kind of compare it to online banking and how that, on a bit of a trajectory over the last 10 years, has gradually increased as it's become more known, more comfortable, more available on devices. And, you can do it on the move. And I think the more people know about it, the more comfortable they feel, and the more it will increase over time naturally. So it just needs to become more widely accepted and known. But having said that, we are seeing strong opt-in rates currently. So that's applicants consenting to provide the data. So we're expecting that to just increase. And alongside consumer feedback that we get along the way, we will absolutely make adjustments, tweaks, refinements to that process to make sure it caters for all of those requirements. And, some of the, I just want a bit more confidence about this, and tell me a bit more about that security. We will absolutely make that journey optimal whenever we receive that feedback. We have actually done a recent a customer survey, with some of our customers that have used open banking from December. And what that has shown is that they are more likely to use the product when the letting agent customer has made them aware during their application process, they are going to see this thing called open banking, and it was a much quicker way to complete your reference. So the survey basically asked these customers, how many of you have heard of open banking before? 9 out of 10 people had not heard of open banking, which is sort of what we were expecting. We asked then a question at the end, which was, based on your experience today, how likely are you to use open banking again in future? 9 out of 10 people then said I would. So it just shows that small awareness within our application, or the letting agent customer making them aware that to go on then in future, they will use that. So for me, that supports the point I made at the start of this answer, which was just having that small piece of awareness from the letting agent saying, by the way, you will be asked to do this in your form, that is expected, and it's a quicker way to do your reference. That customer is then comfortable already, because it's not then this, what is it? I don't understand the process, and I'm just going to skip past it because I don't want to do that. So involvement by letting agents to just make the tenant or the guarantor aware is proving really, really important in gaining those consents from our customers.
Okay, perfect. So hot topic of conversation, fraud. Obviously, we only have to watch the news on an evening to hear of cases, go on the internet in the morning and look at what's going on, and fraud is always, there's always a news story about someone committing fraud somewhere. How can open banking data prevent fraud? Is it fraud proof? I guess is a question.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it is absolutely a hot topic. And that's, one of the reasons we are here is to provide, detail on the applications that come through to us, so that letting agents alongside their landlords can make informed decisions on the people that they're moving into the property. So what we're finding is, fraudulent tenants will find it difficult to hide in this process because they aren't involved in the selection of the transactions. So we're gaining the information, they are just logging into their bank account, and we're then gaining the information that we deem is relevant. But the HomeLet team are the ones selecting those transactions. There's no manipulation, there's no editing involved by the applicant. What we see and what we get is what has happened in that bank account. So it gives the customer some comfort that, there's not been a falsified bank statement that's been created, or a falsified pay slip where we're taking information from a document. They are real, true transactions that have happened at the date they say they've happened, and the amounts that are showing in that statement and in that transaction. Some fraudsters and some applicants are becoming increasingly savvy and more creative in finding ways to commit application fraud. And unfortunately, we are seeing that fraudulent applications are on the rise. So last year, as an example, we had 50,000 references flagged for additional checks by my team for some of the other, the sources that we use. I've touched on CIFAS, I've touched on our default tenant database. There's a number of applications flagged on those databases for additional review. So the team will absolutely take care, and we will review those, but open banking satisfies a lot of that for you, as I say, because the transactions aren't falsified. There are many, many websites out there where customers can buy documents online to satisfy what they need for a reference. That is not the case with open banking. It removes that concern, as I've said, because it can't be manipulated or edited in any way. And the transactions have happened. So we believe it is a real game changer again in the the fraud space.
And does it mean we do anything different, Rebecca, in regards to applications that don't go through banking data? Is it something maybe where there's a bit more awareness around them as to why they've maybe opted out? Do we do anything different, or are we just a bit more on alert, or do we just carry through the normal process?
So I think at the moment, while open banking is still becoming more widely known and people are still getting comfortable with opting into it, we will still complete the same checks that we do on traditional references, but there's still a group of people that are rather having a traditional reference. I think as time goes on, people get more comfortable. We may move into a world where people not wanting to provide their open banking, and then we almost cast more of an eye over their applications over and above what we already do now. So yeah, the traditional process hasn't changed, and we will also do those fraud checks. We have additional flags. There's all sorts of things we do. But yeah, over time, when open banking is kind of the vast majority of what we're doing, and applications are being consented left, right, and centre, it's maybe that small proportion that haven't consented where you just think, well, why not? And what is it about their situation that you need to kind of really understand? So yeah, I think only time will tell on that one, Chris.
I'm just going to flip to a question. We've had a question in from Avita, who, by the sounds of it, obviously their branch is already on open banking data, which is great. they've had a few applicants that have contacted them saying they've had a few issues going through the application. What her question basically is what can they sort of say to them to overcome? Is it a user journey? I know there's a few things we need to make sure the applicants are doing. I don't know if there's anything you can just touch on there, Rebecca, to help answer that question.
Yeah, so any feedback like that, we're often finding it's something that the user's not aware of in their journey. So we sometimes find that if an applicant or a guarantor is trying to open the open banking link in a email app, so a Yahoo app or a Gmail app, for example, sometimes it doesn't always play ball in those apps. So what we do provide in the opening email to our customers is, when you go through the open banking process, if you are using an email app to access your emails, and that's where you're reading our email, copy and paste this link into a separate browser, and you'll find that the form plays ball with you better in that respect. So that's something that, again, we touched on the letting agent involvement, maybe just making customers aware that if they can just copy and paste the link into a browser rather than allowing it to open in the app, we're hoping that it should play ball as well. And of course, it's making sure they've got a good broadband or Wi-Fi connection, because again, that can just slow the process down if they're somewhere that's got a weak signal and they're doing it on the move. They're looking at on 3G or 4G. That can impact how long that process takes for them.
Okay, perfect. So obviously, agents who opted in for banking data, same day referencing. Obviously, we go through the process. The applicant opts in. How does one of our agents know that reference has gone through same day referencing? Is there something that shows on the final report? Is it displayed differently?
Yeah, so on the final report, they have been updated where open banking has been used, because we want to make sure it's clear for the letting agent to see part or all of this reference has been satisfied using open banking transactions. Naturally, there is some information that we are no longer gathering and no longer able to gather as part of open banking, such as employment start date, the job title, or how long somebody's been living at a rented property. So what we are providing on the final report for either landlord or the employment section is a brief summary of information that the applicant has provided in their application form that we aren't always able to confirm. And then we provide the summary of everything we found within the transactions in the banking data. So that will confirm how many transactions we've seen, the company name or the transaction reference that we're seeing, average income and what we expect that to be in terms of the salary. And we're essentially trying to provide all of that information so that letting agents can take that and provide as full a picture as possible to the landlord to help make a decision about whether they're looking to rent to that person. The decisions are the same. We've reflected the criteria versus the traditional reference. So we will still provide acceptable, except with suitable guarantor, or not acceptable in some circumstances. And we are, of course, still offering our additional products on the back of that. So if you get an acceptable report, whether it is open banking or traditional, they will still be eligible for our rent guarantee products, because we're that confident in the decisions that we're gathering and the data that we're seeing.
And I guess that was actually leading on to my last big question I was going to ask you, Rebecca. So thanks for that. I guess, it is a really good point. Obviously, with everything happening at the moment, obviously with COVID-19, the furlough scheme, obviously on Monday, we had some, positive news and a positive announcement that the rollout and the different stages and fingers crossed from June the 21st, we're going to be back to, as much normality as we probably had for a good sort of 15, 16 months, which is, I'm personally quite excited to be able to get out there on a weekend and be able to do things I've not been able to do for a while. But, obviously we're just obviously announced our enhancements to rent guarantee, increasing to 15 months, which comes into effect 1st of March. So that's, just to reiterate, that's not only for new business. That means every single one of our rent guarantee products across both our Inspire and Rent Recovery Plus on the 1st of March, as long as they're not in a claim stage, will go on to the new enhanced cover, which is absolutely unknown in the insurance industry. So we're really excited about it. But I guess the question I was going to ask you, which you've already answered, same day referencing, open banking referencing is applicable for rent guarantee as per our traditional reference, and that's how much we believe in the information that we're obtaining and collecting. So I've got a couple of questions. There was a couple that were submitted pre us going live. A question from Adam: do tenants guarantors have the option to opt out of open banking data? I think you did answer that question, but if you could just reiterate the answer to that question for Adam, if that's all right.
Yeah, of course, they absolutely do. So all of this is driven by the person completing the application form. So whether that is a tenant, whether that is a guarantor, we cannot and will not enforce that they do this. It is completely up to them. They're provided with the options during the form. They're allowed the option to opt in or opt out, whatever their preference might be. But if they do opt out, we present some more information that kind of says, are you sure? Here are some of the benefits that you might miss out on if you choose not to go down this process. They can kind of go back through the form if they want to. If they change their mind and they want to opt back in, they can do that. And if they want to go back through and opt out, they can do that as well. So we do offer complete flexibility. But as I touched on earlier, we are seeing some really, really strong opt-in rates at the moment. So that gives us some comfort that people are comfortable doing it. But I can't stress enough that letting agent involvement, making the tenant or guarantor aware that they may have this option in their application form, and just to do it as long as they feel comfortable, seems to really give the applicant that peace of mind as well, that it is an expected part of the journey. The agent is happy with it and is on board with it. It really does help that process, be as seamless as possible. But it's ultimately their decision to do it, not ours.
Brilliant. Okay, we've got some questions flying in now, which is good. One from Jane. What provider do we use to carry out open banking data checks?
So our provider of choice is a company called TrueLayer. And we use TrueLayer because of the flexibility it gives us in terms of the number of banks that we can access. So at the moment, we've got access to around about 40 banks with TrueLayer, which for our tenants across the country, it just gives improved choice and coverage from my point of view for our applicants. It doesn't just limit it to the top 9 banks, your Lloyds, your Barclays, your NatWests. There are many, many other banks that, some are quite small, we may not have always heard of, but applicants are using them. So it just gives that flexibility. And I think it's probably supporting those opt-in rates that we're seeing, because an applicant can actually go in and provide the data to us. So yeah, TrueLayer is the business we use. Perfect.
A question from Nick. If a tenant has recently started a new job and doesn't disclose it as a part of the application, will open banking data find that new job compared to if we went down a traditional contacting the employer?
So we are seeing in the transactions, as long as we see the relevant transactions, we are seeing in there transaction payment references. So we are able to see, based on what they're telling us in the application form, if they're saying they're working somewhere and we see a payment that's somewhere else, that will not go down the open banking route. And we use our what we call flip to manual process. And that's where we'll look to gain manual references. If we're calling then an employer that they've then left, naturally that will then prompt a phone call to the applicant to ask them where they are now, and we will then gain future employment information. If during the application form, the tenant or guarantor makes us aware that they are going to be changing employment during the tenancy, they are not given the option to do open banking. So any change in employment, open banking is not an option for them. And I think that's really important and a really valid question to call out. It's only where they are in ongoing employment, and that is not going to change, where they will be given the option to do open banking. So yeah, I think that's a really good question. Thank you, Nick.
Perfect. One from Steve. What percentage of applicants are consenting to open banking data currently? He has apologised in case he missed it. But if you could just clarify again, what percentage of applicants we're seeing are opting in for open banking?
So at the moment, it's about 50%, which I think is a really, really good number. So, 1 in 2 are happy to provide us with the access to this open transaction data. But we are seeing, since we went live to now, things are gradually increasing. So we are hoping, in a couple of months' time, we'll be up to sort of 60% and beyond. And the point that I touch on in terms of listening to customer feedback, completing further surveys. We are going to be doing ongoing surveys as well. As the process becomes more settled, people are more comfortable with it, the feedback will change. They might want to see more, they might want to understand more, and we will adapt the process in line with that as well. So yeah, we're really pleased with those opt-in rates currently, but they will not stop there in our view. There will always be an element, however, there will always be a number of people that just don't want to do it. And that is absolutely fine. And that's why we've still catered for the traditional reference in the seamless way and the best way we know how. They provide the data. We then analyse the data. If we take it, great, it's a same day reference. If we can't take it, we are the ones that then deal with that as a manual reference. No further involvement from the tenant. If they opt out of open banking, the process is as it is now. Nothing is different for you or for the applicant or guarantor customer.
Okay, thank you. Just last question then, I think, before we wrap up. Just one from Simon. How do we opt in to ensure we are a part of the same day referencing process? I guess question for me there, Simon, simple as if you're not already opted in, just contact your account manager, or feel free to email me directly on chris.turner@homelet.co.uk, and we can pick the phone up and make sure you're opted in, so you can make the most of this straight away. So fine. Okay, I think there's no more questions. I don't know if there's anything, Rebecca, you wanted to add on top of anything else we've spoken about at all?
I don't think so, other than that last question probably closes it on a really nice point. Come on board. The process is brilliant. It is the way that the industry is going. We're really pleased that we're able to offer this service already. And I was processing some of them the other day just to get a really good feel for what my team members were dealing with, because I was hearing lots of nice feedback about how much they love this process. And I kid you not, I got a real buzz out of it. It is an absolutely brilliant and fun process for my team as well. Different way of doing things, being able to analyse that data and make some really informed decisions. It's brilliant. I cannot stress that enough. That's not just a sales pitch. It really does get me excited, and I'm really passionate about this. It's our baby, and we're really, really proud of what we've developed. So thrilled to bits. It's been live since the start, well, towards the end of last year. This year it's going to come on leaps and bounds as well, with customer feedback, ongoing development and improvements as well. So we are completely excited and really love what we've achieved. So yeah, get in touch, send Chris all of those emails.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for your time. Obviously you're in the office, I'm at home, so no, thank you very much. And like I've said, if any of our agents just want some further information, or want to opt in if they're not already in there, or want to talk about anything rent guarantee related, then either contact your account manager, or again, email me on chris.turner@homelet.co.uk. So thank you, Rebecca. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for everybody joining us. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.